Good morning, La Pluma students in grades 3rd through 5th. Welcome to our newest art video. Today we are going to talk about a sphere. And I know we've talked about spheres already, but today we're gonna actually really focus on how to draw a sphere on a piece of paper. A sphere is different than a circle in that it has form, so it's three-dimensional. A circle is just a flat shape on a piece of paper. So a sphere, you have to show the depth, which is a little bit different. This is going to be our project today. We are going to use a pencil to draw a sphere using value. Value is the lightness or darkness of a color. And so we are going to be using a value scale, which I'll show you right now, to help us shade in our sphere realistically. So here on this end you have white, which I didn't even draw because the paper is white, and then you have your lightest pencil markings, and then a little bit darker, and then your darkest pencil markings. And so we're going to be using all of these shading techniques from our lightest white to our darkest today as we draw our sphere. I want to introduce you to an artist who used spheres in his art. His name was Salvador Dali. He was a Spanish artist who loved surrealism, and that's a concept in art where you kind of paint things that are realistic but yet have a dreamlike or bizarre quality about them. And so he painted a beautiful picture of his wife using spheres, which is such an interesting concept to think of painting a portrait in spheres, or like with balls that reveal her different features. So I'm going to show you the portrait of his wife, who was his muse. A muse is like an inspiration or somebody that you kind of, or like something that helps you be creative and express yourself. So he really loved his wife, and she was his inspiration and his muse. Before I show you the portrait of her, I want to show you an actual photograph of Salvador Dali. He is very distinct looking. He had this crazy mustache that he loved to style in all different funky ways, and he just loved to have to be different and to have creativity. So one of the ways he was creative was by the way he styled his mustache. And I'm gonna show you the portrait that he painted of his wife. Gala is her name, Gala Dali. And he used spheres layered on top of each other to create this concept of his wife. And it's just so, I think, so beautiful, and it's so interesting, and just such a different way to paint a portrait. And you can see each sphere has just so much detail and so much shading. The eye here is just so fascinating, the nose here. But he just did a beautiful job using spheres to create a portrait, an abstract-ish portrait of his wife, Gala. Okay, let's get started on our project of learning how to draw a sphere. Okay, we are going to start by drawing a value scale. And this is a way to practice shading from lightest to darkest. So what I'd like you to do on this practice sheet is draw 2 horizontal lines in the middle, and then connect the top and bottom on the right and left. Split that bar in half approximately. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then split each of those bars in half again, so that you're left with 4 squares or 4 rectangles. This end of the value scale will be our dark shading. This end will be our light shading. And so you're gonna need a pencil, and that's it. So let's get to work. So I'm gonna start with my darkest square, and I'm gonna use some pressure with my pencil because I really wanna get a dark mark. And what I'm doing here is I'm using cross hatching, which means I'm going in different directions to overlap my pencil marks in order to get a darker shade. So I'm kind of going horizontally and also vertically. And again, this is just for practice. It does not have to be perfect, but we want to try to make this rectangle dark. It's gonna be our darkest of the four. Okay, now I like to skip from the darkest and go to the lightest. So with the lightest shading, we're gonna use a very light pencil touch. I'm really just like barely trying to touch the paper. I'm still gonna use cross hatching because I think it's a great way to fill in the space, but I might not go over it as many times. I don't want to do as many layers. Okay, so that is my lightest box. And then in here, I need to have two middle shades. So I'm gonna go back to this end, and I'm going to do a darker shade that's just slightly less dark than this one. So I'm still gonna use pressure on my pencil, but not as much as I was here. I'm lightening it up a little bit. I want it to be dark enough that it'll be darker than this box, but light enough that it won't be as dark as this box. So I'm just using my cross hatching technique, which is side to side and up and down to kind of shade that in. And I'm feeling pretty happy about that. You can see that this is my darkest, this one's a little bit lighter, and then this end is my lightest. So for my last box here, I want to try to get in between these two shades. So darker than this, but lighter than this one. I'm not trying to make it perfect, I'm just practicing. I'm gonna still use my cross hatching, and I like to turn my paper because sometimes it's easier to get into the little corners. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker, but not too much darker. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'm gonna go back and make this one just a little bit darker because I feel like they're too similar. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that value scale. I go from my darkest to my lightest, and each one's just a gradual change. As you work on value scales and as you get more advanced, you can try to do more boxes that go from darkest to lightest. I've even seen some that have more boxes than this, and each one is just a little bit, gets a little bit lighter as it goes down the scale. All right, so we are going to use our value scale as we draw our sphere. So keep that handy. Okay, you are going to need some type of circle to trace. I just have a mug here, and I'm gonna place it in the center of my paper, and I'm gonna reach around. I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna reach around as far as I can and trace around the mug to make a circle. And I didn't quite do it perfectly here at the bottom. That's okay. We're gonna add a shadow there at the bottom so it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, I have my circle drawn now, and I'm ready to start thinking about using my value scale to shade in my circle to look like a sphere. So the way we're gonna do it is we're gonna have the light coming from this top corner down. The shadow is always on the opposite side of the light. So darkest part, the shadow, will be on this side, and then the center will be medium. Okay, so the light's gonna hit our sphere about right here. So that part is gonna get to stay completely white. I just drew kind of a slanted oval. And then this next oval of our sphere will be slightly darker. And then I'm gonna draw another line. So this middle part here will be even a little bit darker, and then this part will be the darkest, the shadow. Okay, this is a fun challenge just to see if you can do it and just to see how realistic you can make your sphere look on a piece of paper. So I'm gonna start with, I'm not gonna do anything to that center oval, I just wanna keep that. But I'm gonna start with a very light touch, and I am shading in that second oval. I wanna get just a little bit of pencil on there, so I'm using a light touch. And I'm gonna do the cross hatching like I did on my practice scale. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is practice, so it's not gonna be perfect, and that's okay. Okay, I like that. I feel like that looks good. I am going to go back and erase that original circle that I drew because I want my shading to look more natural. I'm gonna kind of add in a little bit of lines there with pencil so it looks a little more natural, not like this perfect kind of circle. Okay, now I'm ready to go to the next section. Actually, I think I'm gonna skip to darkest, like I did with my value scale, because I just think it's easier to draw dark or light. The middle is a little bit trickier. So I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna really push my pencil into the paper. I really wanna get that dark shadow. And again, I'm gonna do some cross hatching to kind of fill in and do layers and make it darker. Sometimes I turn my paper just to get a better angle. So you're just trying to get it as dark as you can. Sorry, I kind of went outside the line there, so I'm kind of like redrawing my edge to make it a little bit smoother. Okay, so I'm feeling good about that. Okay, so now our challenge is to do a middle gray, a middle pencil shade. So it needs to kind of adjust from darkest to white. And so this is a challenge, and our eraser can kind of come in handy. Sometimes I like to remove a little bit of pencil just to lighten it a little bit, like if I get too much pencil on there. So let's get started. I'm gonna try a darker gray, but not as dark as the shadow. A little bit of cross hatching there. All right, I think this is looking great. Remember that we're not going for perfection, we're just going for practice and learning and new experiences, trying new things. So you don't have to be afraid that you're not gonna do a good job. As long as you're trying, you're doing a good job. Okay, so I'm liking that middle gray. But what I want to do, I can still see kind of a line here and then a pretty big line here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make it a little more gradual. So I'm going to come back and darken in right around this line to make it look like it's a little bit more gradual of a shadow. I don't want like a really harsh shadow, harsh line. So I'm liking that. I feel like it looks a little bit more gradual there now. And I still see like a pretty significant line here. So I'm gonna come back in and just kind of gradually just add a little bit more around there so that just doesn't look quite so, I don't know, quite so like strong of a line. The more gradual that the shading is, the more realistic our sphere will look, and we're really going for realistic. All right, I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy. Okay, it's looking great, and I am going to add my shadow that is cast by the sphere onto the tabletop, and this really does help make it look even more realistic. It's hard not to go back and kind of mess and add a little bit more color in here and there. Like I could probably do this, just go back and be like, oh, a little more here, a little less there, for a long time, because it's just fun. It's fun to try layering and then, oh, maybe I'll take a little bit out here. But for the sake of time, I'll move on. Okay, for the shadow, I'm gonna start not in the center of the bottom, but kind of a little bit over to the right. And I'm gonna draw a line. We've done lots of shadows in class, so this probably won't seem new. I'm gonna draw a line coming out, and then I'm gonna kind of draw like a tongue shape, sort of like a curved line. And then this is the shadow cast by the sphere. So it is going to be dark. So I'm gonna really press. Okay, my friends, I think that we have done it. We have drawn a sphere and it looks great. You've learned about how to make a value scale to do the different levels of shading from lightest to darkest on your sphere. And I would love to see what you guys come up with if you want to send it to your teacher. Thanks, take care. We miss you so, so, so much. Bye.